10 years had passed since our brief encounter when I got caught with the sun in my eyes. It was a total eclipse of the sun. Total eclipse of the sun.
So I was watching avidly yesterday afternoon, or early evening here actually, the total eclipse of the sun as it went across the United States. And I had an interest because a friend of mine was watching it in Maine, where she had one of the best views. The weather there was absolutely perfect, and she described the experience as awesome. So I look back to the eclipse that was visible from Europe in 1999, August 1999, and I have to say that my experience in going to see that, witness it, was anything but awesome. For several weeks I'd been sort of umming and ahhing, shall I go, shan't I go, what's the weather going to be like, because that's what it all depends on. And originally I was prepared to go anywhere where the weather was going to be good. Anyway, in the end, I was fixed because I agreed to meet a friend of mine from the south of France, and we agreed to meet in Nancy, in northeastern France. And then I was sort of wondering, do I take the bike or do I basically drive? And literally right up until the last day, I actually made reservations for the bike and the car. And the day before I was due to leave, my colleague in the office said to me, "But Rob, you never had any intention of taking the bike. You always were going to take the car," which was like a red rag to a bull to me. So I thought, right, that's it. I'm taking the bike regardless. So I went into the office the following morning. The eclipse was on the 11th of August. So this is now the 10th. I went into the office on the 10th of August and cancelled my reservation for the van, or the car actually, not a van then. And I then went home and packed the bike up, packed everything that I thought I would need, only going for a few nights, and got home, got the bike out, and guess what? The rain came. So I drove the 4 miles to my office because I needed to pick up some insurance documents, and I was absolutely saturated by the time I got to the office. Becky in the office thought it was hilarious. Anyway, I went off, left the office, drove up the highway, up the M4 motorway to get the ferry. And at one point on the motorway, the rain was so incredibly heavy, I just stopped under a bridge and had to wait for a while. Anyway, I arrived in Dover in sunshine, believe it or not, and got the ferry. I guess it may have been about 5:30 or 6 o'clock. It's an hour and a half to get to France, and then it's another. France is ahead of us, so I probably arrived in France at about 7:30. And as soon as I got there, it started peeing down, and I booked into a Formula One hotel in Cambrai, which is about an hour and a half's ride. So by the time I got there, Formula One, by the way, is it's like being in a coffin almost. It is just a very, very cheap hotel, the ultimate of basic, but cheap. And that's what I'm about. Cheap is what I'm about. So this was just on the outskirts of a town called Cambrai. When I drove into the car park, it was under about 2 inches of water, but I was allowed to park under the canopy. Then I got into the hotel only to find there's absolutely no food available at all, except for a vending machine. So I think I got myself a bag of chips, a bag of crisps, and some chocolate and Coca-Cola from the vending machine. Following morning, it was actually dry to start with, and I started off down the highway, but I wanted to take the back scenic roads to Nancy. So I pulled off the highway and then pulled into a lay-by. Next thing I see is a guy turn up on a moped, and I looked back and I just went up and to see what he'd got, and he said he'd just arrived over on the ferry last night as well, and he had ridden all the way from Torquay, which is in the southwest of England, to Dover because he only had a 50cc moped, couldn't go on the highway, and he was on his way to Stuttgart, German guy, learning English, and he had absolutely no idea that Stuttgart, his hometown, was going to be in the middle of an eclipse the following day. Anyway, I carried on and had quite a pleasant ride, actually, along scenic roads, till I eventually got to our guest house near Nancy. I can't remember exactly where it was now, but it wasn't actually in the city, it was outside. And met my good friends from the south of France. So we had planned to have our evening meal in the guest house, and I looked at the menu and I thought, don't understand it. I can sort of understand some French on menus. So I said to my friend, what are we having tonight? And he looked at it, he said, we are having donkey. What? Yes, we're having donkey. I'm thinking about these donkey sausages or whatever that apparently are eaten over there. And then he looked at it again, and he couldn't understand why I was finding it so strange and funny. And he said, no, not donkey. He said, we are having turkey. Oh, the relief that came over me when I found that out. So anyway, we took to our beds in the end. And the following morning, from memory, that it wasn't raining. I sat down with them for breakfast. Next thing I know, a bloody bee drops out of one of the rafters on the ceiling onto my head and stings me on the head. Oh, actually, I think it was sort of around here somewhere. Well, bearing in mind I had to wear a helmet, this was not too clever, I must admit. Anyway, we were heading for the hills, sort of northwest of Nancy, to get into the maximum area of total eclipse. And once we started heading along the road there, it was obvious that the traffic was getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And the rain was getting harder and harder. Anyway, I thought, no, I've got to see this. And I selfishly said to my friends, look, I'm going to go on ahead because I'm not going to see this otherwise, because they were stuck in traffic. So I went on ahead and I ended up in this small town centre. And it was raining, it was miserable, gloomy, and basically the daylight just got more and more gloomy. And the totality passed. And it was incredibly unimpressive, I have to say. Just like a really gloomy, rainy, dull day, which is what it was, in fact. So, given that I'd gone all this way and I really wanted to see this eclipse, I called. It was in the early days of cell phones. So I called my wife, who was in Paynton with her parents in Paynton in South Devon, and she said, "Oh, we saw it, we saw it." Well, it was only a partial eclipse from the south coast of England, but it was apparently very impressive. They saw it through glasses, and so that, to cap it all, I'd seen absolutely nothing, having ridden through the rain and got stung by a bee, and I thought I was going to have to eat donkey. And they stayed where they were and watched it and saw quite a decent experience. Anyway, finally, I had intended to drive up to Verdun and around the World War I battlefields, but to be honest, the weather was so bad there was no point in doing that. So I decided to come home. When I eventually I left the Northsea area around 1 p.m. and got to, from memory, I got to the ferry maybe about 4:30. And then, of course, I meet people on the ferry, other guys on bikes. "Oh, we saw it. We had a great view from Luxembourg." And I'm thinking, don't tell me. In the end, I got home, I think it was about 10 o'clock. And the last, to cap it all, the ride home was relatively dry until I got about 10 miles from home. And then it absolutely stair-rodded it down. And rain was so hard that I had to open my visor to be able to see. And then I'm getting the rain hitting my cheeks, like needles hitting my cheeks and in my eyes and everything. So it had been absolutely bloody awful experience. But when I look back on it, quite amusing. I'm sure the people who were involved thought it was funny as well. So comparing with driving 2 hours into the area of totality in Maine, which is what my friend did yesterday, I consider my experience was rather more farcical. Anyway, sorry this has been a bit of a monologue, but I wanted to get that little tale out while I was in my mind.